It was supposed to be the best day of Gladys Ricard's life. Dressed in her wedding gown, she moved around her home, sharing happy moments with family and friends as they all got ready for the big day. Laughter filled the air, and photographers snapped every joyful smile. But outside, someone from her past was watching from his car, unable to let her go. He waited, growing more tense with every passing moment, until finally he decided to go inside. Gladys's family, busy with last-minute details, didn't notice him at first. What happened next would change everything for everyone there that day. Gladys Ricard was born on October 15, 1960, in a small town in the Dominican Republic. She was raised by her mother, Ana Rosario, a single mother of four. Gladys had three siblings, Norma, Yolanda, and Juan. The names of their fathers remained unknown, but Ana kept her children close and instilled strong family values in them. From a young age, Gladys stood out for her compassionate nature, consistently displaying kindness and empathy. She shared a particularly close bond with her older sister Norma. Even as a teenager, Gladys dreamed big. Her ambitions included becoming a successful professional, having a beautiful wedding, and starting her own family. However, she knew that achieving these dreams would require dedication to her studies. In 1978, shortly after graduating high school, 18-year-old Gladys fell in love and became pregnant. Unfortunately, the relationship ended, and the following year she gave birth to her son alone. The child's father, whose family background remains unknown, never took responsibility for him. Determined to provide for her son, Gladys decided to set aside her academic pursuits. Raising him was challenging, but her son became a source of immense joy and strength for Gladys, encouraging her to move forward. Gladys eventually secured a stable job to support her son. Around this time, her sister Norma had moved to New York with her two daughters. Gladys eventually secured a stable job to support her son. Around this time, her sister Norma had moved to New York with her two daughters. Gladys began to consider joining her sister, hoping that relocating to the United States would offer her and her son better opportunities. She worked tirelessly to save up, while her other siblings, Juan and Yolanda, also moved to join Norma in the U.S. In 1983, at the age of 22, Gladys finally saved enough money to move, though she couldn't afford to bring her son with her at that time. He stayed behind in the care of his grandmother. Upon arriving in New York, Gladys settled in the heart of the Dominican immigrant community in Manhattan, close to her sister and nieces. With her priorities set, she started working as a cleaner and soon enrolled in a local college to study accounting. Days turned into years, and by 1987, Gladys was able to bring her son to the U.S., fulfilling a long-held dream. They moved into a comfortable apartment where they lived with her sister and nieces. This marked a joyful time in Gladys's life, as she was surrounded by her loved ones who admired her courage and optimism. In 1992, while on her routine commute to work via the New York City subway, Gladys caught the attention of a man named Agustin Garcia, who happened to be on the same train. Born in the Dominican Republic in 1952, Agustin had moved to New York as a child with his parents. With ambition and hard work, he established himself as a successful businessman, founding a multi-service agency in Manhattan during the 1980s. He also created a bilingual newspaper for the Dominican community, aiming to keep them informed and connected. Agustin was well respected in his community. After his first marriage ended in divorce, he was granted custody of his 2 children and settled with them in New Jersey. His success allowed him to expand into various business ventures across the city. He even founded the Federation of Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, committed to empowering the community. Known for his sociable personality, Agustin treated everyone kindly, gaining a reputation as a charming and approachable figure. That day on the subway, Agustin felt that fate had brought him and Gladys together. Despite rarely using the subway, their encounter led to a brief conversation, during which Agustin managed to get her phone number, promising to see her again. Fascinated by her warmth and beauty, Agustin began courting Gladys, showering her with lavish gifts and taking her to upscale restaurants and places she had never experienced before. Their meeting would mark the start of a new chapter in Gladys's life, filled with excitement and unexpected turns. Gradually, Gladys and Agustin's relationship deepened, with Agustin sparing no expense to show his affection. After about a year of dating, he proposed they move in together, and Gladys agreed, yet a yearning lingered in her heart. Gladys deeply wanted marriage and a family with Agustin, but he seemed resistant to the idea. Meanwhile, tensions arose between her son and Agustin's children. Hoping to smooth things over, Gladys encouraged her son to be patient, believing that the children just needed time to adjust. Unfortunately, the reality proved to be more challenging, as Gladys noticed Agustin often seemed indifferent to her son. After 2 years of living together, the unresolved issues prompted Gladys to suggest they live apart. Though saddened, Agustin agreed, even helping her find a new home. In 1995, with his financial support, Gladys purchased a lovely 2-story house in New Jersey, conveniently close to Agustin's residence. From then on, Agustin proudly introduced Gladys as his wife to friends, family, and the Dominican community in the U.S., projecting an image of a perfect partnership. Yet behind the public facade, their relationship faced serious strains. Agustin had multiple affairs, which Gladys eventually discovered. This deeply hurt her, and her once vibrant personality began to dim. Many assumed her sadness stemmed from Agustin's reluctance to marry, so they chose not to pry. Whenever marriage was brought up, Agustin dismissed the idea, saying he didn't want to risk another divorce. Gladys, however, longed for the security of marriage and made her feelings known. Gradually, she also began to confide in friends about Agustin's infidelities and his increasingly controlling and possessive behavior, which led to frequent arguments. During one heated confrontation, Agustin, completely out of control, threatened her with a firearm. Terrified, Gladys sought comfort in her sister's support. Then, in the fall of 1998, Gladys unexpectedly visited Agustin's office and found him in a compromising situation with a younger woman. This was the final straw. She immediately ended the relationship and, with her family's support, decided to cut him out of her life. But Agustin was not ready to let go, treating her more as a possession than a partner. He began persistently calling and leaving gifts at her door, from roses to Bibles, but Gladys disregarded these attempts. By March 1999, Gladys had moved on emotionally, feeling a newfound sense of freedom and hope. Around this time, during a lunch break at a nearby restaurant, she met James Preston, a 40-year-old accountant with a passion for music. They hit it off instantly, enjoying a lively conversation and deciding to stay in touch. As they went on more dates, James proved to be kind, considerate, and attentive to Gladys and her family. For the first time in years, Gladys felt truly happy, something her family noticed and celebrated. Only 2 months after they met, James proposed to her with a ring, and Gladys, overjoyed, accepted. Gladys was finally on the brink of the happy ending she had always dreamed of. Their families and friends joined in the excitement, helping with wedding plans and even involving the neighbors in the celebration. Gladys and James set the wedding date for Sunday, September 26, 1999. However, when Augustine heard about her engagement, he became increasingly desperate to win her back. His calls intensified, and he would often park near her house at night, watching from his car and noting down the license plates of visitors. Though several neighbors noticed him lurking, Gladys remained unaware of his behavior until the night of August 12, 1999. That evening, while she and James were enjoying a quiet night at home, Augustine showed up unexpectedly at her door. Augustine arrived at Gladys's door with a calm demeanor, asking her to let him in so they could talk. But Gladys, sensing his true intentions, firmly refused. When he realized she wasn't going to let him in, Augustine's facade fell, and his anger surfaced. He began throwing stones at her windows, frightening Gladys enough to call emergency services. Within minutes, a patrol car arrived and officers restrained Augustine. However, Gladys decided not to press charges, hoping the incident would scare him into leaving her alone. She only wanted peace and to focus on her upcoming wedding. But Augustine's obsession would not end there. On September 24, 1999, just 2 days before her wedding, Gladys went out late in the evening to pick up a last-minute item for her bridesmaids. She didn't realize that Augustine was following her. Inside the store, he approached her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as if they were a couple, and walked alongside her throughout the aisles. Security cameras captured this encounter. Afterward, they parted ways. But the incident left Gladys feeling unnerved. She sensed that Augustine was becoming increasingly dangerous. Then, the morning of her wedding day, September 26, 1999, arrived. Friends and family gathered at her home as photographers and videographers captured joyful moments of the bride and groom preparing. Outside, a classic car and 2 limousines awaited to transport everyone to a church in Queens. The bride, radiant and surrounded by loved ones, took photos with her 19-year-old son and her mother, who had traveled from the Dominican Republic for the occasion. Meanwhile, Augustine drove by slowly, observing every movement from his car, hoping to catch a glimpse of Gladys. He circled the block several times until one of Gladys's nieces recognized him. Inside the house, unaware of Augustine's presence, Gladys was handing out flowers to her bridesmaids when he parked directly in front of her home. He placed a gun in his bag and a few extra bullets in his pocket before heading to the front door. Augustine made his way into the house, with Gladys's brother trying to keep a close eye on him. Upon seeing Gladys in her tiara and wedding dress, Augustine ignored everyone else in the room, pulling out his gun and, in a moment of rage, fired at her. The horrific scene was captured on film by the cameramen who were there for the wedding. Though Gladys's brother Juan attempted to intervene, it was too late. Gladys had been hit by 3 bullets and was fatally wounded. Juan and Augustine then struggled as others called emergency services. Police and paramedics arrived to find the two men still fighting, with Agustin yelling that he wanted to end his own life. Officers eventually separated them and restrained both. Paramedics tried desperately to revive Gladys, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. News crews arrived quickly and the story began spreading across local stations. Norma, Gladys's sister, learned of the tragedy from the news and rushed to the house in shock. James, Gladys's fiancé, was waiting at the church, assuming his bride's delay was due to wedding preparations. But when someone broke the news to him, his day of joy turned into a nightmare. Agustin was taken into custody, and investigators swiftly began piecing together the crime. Surveillance footage and the extra bullets found in his pockets were clear evidence. In his car, police discovered a list of license plate numbers from vehicles parked near Gladys's home. Forensic examinations revealed 3 gunshot wounds on Gladys, one in her upper arm, another in her spine, and the fatal one to her head. During his initial interrogation, Agustin claimed he had simply planned to stop by and hadn't intended to harm Gladys. But when pressed by investigators, he finally admitted to the killing, expressing regret for what had happened. The following day, September 27, 1999, Agustin appeared in court for his first hearing. Despite his claim of innocence, he was charged with murder, illegal possession of a firearm, and endangering the lives of minors present at the scene. The judge set Agustin's bail at $5 million, and he was confined to county jail to await trial. On October 1, 1999, Gladys's funeral was held, attended by a large number of people, including the investigators working on her case. Loved ones gathered around her casket, where she lay dressed in her wedding gown to bid their final farewell. Later that day, Gladys's family, along with James's relatives, traveled to the Dominican Republic to bury her. Due to the high-profile nature of the crime and Agustin's status, the case quickly gained widespread media attention in both the Dominican Republic and the United States. The trial was scheduled for early October 2001. During preliminary hearings, Agustin's defense introduced an alternative version of events, holding press conferences where they argued he had acted in self-defense against an attack by Gladys's brother. They claimed Agustin never intended to harm Gladys. From that point, the defense pursued an aggressive strategy, aiming to tarnish Gladys's public image to sway opinion in Agustin's favor. The defense team suggested that, although Gladys was engaged to James, she had supposedly maintained a secret relationship with Agustin. They argued that jealousy had driven him to kill her impulsively and requested the charges be downgraded to involuntary manslaughter, which would result in a lighter sentence of 10 years in prison under New Jersey law. This tactic found some traction in the community, where gossip began circulating that Agustin was actually a victim of heartbreak, with some saying Gladys had brought it upon herself. However, on the first anniversary of Gladys's death, a Dominican-born woman in Miami, deeply moved by the story, started a campaign to raise awareness about domestic violence and support victims. She wore her wedding dress while participating in a marathon, sparking a powerful movement that led other women to join her each year in what became known as the Bridal March. Gladys's family joined this initiative, attending press conferences and supporting the cause to preserve her memory and stand against domestic violence. The defense, meanwhile, continued its efforts, holding public discussions about the case. This led the prosecution to ask the judge to issue a gag order, which was granted. Yet, much of the damage was already done as rumors persisted in the community. The prosecution knew that showing the wedding video footage, which captured the tragic moment, was crucial for their case, a move Gladys's family supported in the hope of attaining justice. On February 14, 2001, a hearing was held where only the judge viewed the footage, while the courtroom heard the audio. For Gladys's family, it was a painful experience, and the defense argued the video was an unfair advantage for the prosecution. Ultimately, the judge allowed only the segments showing the shooting itself. The trial began on October 2, 2001. The defense maintained that Agustin had been overwhelmed by the news of Gladys's upcoming wedding and that he was only defending himself from her brother and son. They presented footage from a security camera at the store Gladys visited 2 days before the wedding, attempting to imply she and Agustin had maintained a romantic relationship, despite evidence to the contrary. This line of defense initially appeared to sway the jury, but when the prosecution played the wedding video, it became clear that Agustin had not been attacked by anyone else in the room and had directly targeted Gladys. On October 16, 2001, Agustin testified, claiming he had lost consciousness after allegedly being attacked. However, on October 23, 2001, the jury found him guilty on all charges. The verdict brought a sense of relief to Gladys's family, who celebrated this step toward justice amidst their grief. Months later, in February 2002, the judge sentenced the 50-year-old Agustin to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Agustin, now incarcerated in New Jersey State Prison, has since refused to discuss the case publicly. He reportedly found religion, becoming a preacher, but his requests for parole have repeatedly been denied. Gladys's story left an indelible mark on the community and spread nationwide. The Bridal March, born from this tragedy, has continued for over 2 decades. The march, symbolized by black sunglasses and veils to hide bruises, represents solidarity with victims and an effort to raise awareness. The event, supported by donations from local authorities and private donors, has provided a safe space for countless victims of violence, encouraging them to seek help and overcome fear. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.